Hey everybody, it's everyone's favorite week of the year. It's DevOps Enterprise Summit US is starting this week. And used to be you could actually fly to Las Vegas or San Francisco and then ignore everything else for a few days and soak it up. We're doing it online this year thanks to the pandemic. But Steve and I met at DevOps Enterprise Summit last year. I certainly can credit an enormous amount of my inspiration and understanding of this field to this conference. So we wanted to take a few minutes to just go through some of the sessions that we were most looking forward to. The DevOps Enterprise Summit has a tool called Sked, which allows you to select and even share which sessions you're going to and which sessions you're excited about. So Steve and I will share our personal links to the sessions that we've bookmarked. But we wanted to talk through a few of the highlights here. And this is just to really reflect our bias for speakers and topics that we're excited about or we know in the past. This is in no way meant to reflect on the theoretical objective quality of these sessions or speakers, and it's just an enormous opportunity cost of all the sessions you have to miss at DevOps Enterprise Summit. I'll go through a few of my top 3 picks, and not to be counted in my top 3 because Steve's keeping score here. All of the opening remarks and closing remarks from Gene and Jeff are super high quality, and they bring in a lot of really excellent points and help give an overview. So definitely don't miss that. Some of the other ones that I'm really excited about, Brian Finster has been a popular speaker in the DevOps space for a long time. He's got a session on how to misuse and abuse the DORA metrics, which is one of my favorite topics as well. In fact, I'm leading 2 lean coffee sessions, one on Wednesday and one on Thursday, all on avoiding the misuse of developer metrics. So weaponizing metrics, it's a real thing, but this is a great topic to look at what's the right balance and how to not abuse metrics. One of the other ones that jumped out at me is this thinking upstream about the White House cybersecurity executive order. This is something that my colleague Daniel Riedel has looked at quite a lot, is this whole idea of software supply chain. So this may sound a little bit esoteric, like why on earth are we talking about an executive order? I don't know, maybe I think a lot of the people in the IT world were quite pleased when there was an executive order that finally began to target like software development processes, and in this case, how to secure the software supply chain, which is an issue that really needs to be urgently addressed for the world and is a big part of our future. Here, this is an interesting one, flow engineering with Steve Pereira and Andrew Davis. So not to be missed, I would definitely point that out. And then my last one, I guess I would say, there's a lot of good ones here, but I'll say this: Gene Kim and Steve Spears, the 4 characteristics of structure needed to get great dynamics. So there's no description here, but basically if Steve Spears speaks, you show up and you listen, and same with Gene Kim. And this idea of the balance of structure and dynamics, I think if you're not familiar with their talk track on this, you'll be shocked about how deep that goes and how incredibly applicable and broadly applicable that topic is. So those are a few picks. Steve, what would you go to?
Yeah, I think that structure and dynamics, if anyone's been paying attention to the Ideal Cast, that's the common theme that I think Gene's really been exploring with Steve and other speakers on the podcast. So it's been really interesting to see that develop over time. And we keep running into it over and over again, right? But, back to the conference itself, I think, it feels like we've been preparing for this for a year, and then all of a sudden it's here. It's tomorrow. It's unbelievable. And so, I'm glad that we're getting this chance to kind of organize ourselves in preparation for the event. And doing it in public, I think, is one of the ways of making sure that we get it done before
and go to the sessions.
Then we try and stumble into the conference and chase these different talks and balance when you've got 4 different things you want to see at the same time. So I think this is a great exercise. I recommend it to everybody. And film your picks and put them on YouTube. This is great. But today we heard from Matt Parker about his upcoming book a little bit in advance. which luckily I think is a teaser that we can talk about. But his book on radical enterprise, and he's posted a story, an excerpt from the book about Hire, the manufacturer. I think they make all kinds of appliances, and that story really resonated with me as I read it today, and so hopefully he gets into that in his session. I think it's an excellent example of kind of rejuvenating an enterprise and getting people thinking in terms of flow, not only in workflow but also funding, which was kind of really something that we need to talk about more. How do we transform not only just workflow but how we fund value streams and continuous delivery when we're moving away from the project world. One other one that caught my eye was a talk about a map for DevOps, a guiding map for DevOps by Matt Saunders, who's from Adaptivist, which is a consulting company that typically stays ahead of a lot of trends, and talking about the collision of DevOps and value streams, and I'm hoping the mapping that he's alluding to is something around value stream mapping, of course, because I think that that's really an excellent way for folks to not only get started with DevOps, but level up and really kind of accelerate efforts, whether it's DevOps or whatever you want to do. And then the last one that hit my radar, I will save for a moment and highlight your other session, DevOps for Salesforce. So you're going to be a busy fellow over the course of the conference. Hopefully you've got some breaks between these sessions, but I think DevOps in the context of the Salesforce ecosystem is something that people are going to be bumping up against because Salesforce is in almost every enterprise, and custom development on top of Salesforce can be challenging, to say the least. And so ways of doing that well, ways of integrating that with other development practices, I think there's limited guidance out there other than what you've put out into the world. And so a talk on that subject, I think, is really, really powerful. But last pick would be Ron Westrom talking about organizational culture. I think a lot of folks are familiar with the Westrom model of organizational culture, talking about pathological compared to generative cultures, and seeing him talk about information flow. There's no description here again, but I think it's pretty predictable what he's going to be digging into, and I'm really interested to hear what he has to say in 2021. Because it's I wasn't expecting to see him show up on the agenda, and I love when we have folks who've sort of constantly cited by the DevOps community kind of come out of the shadows and say, yeah, here's what I think. So really excited for that.
I don't know how common it is at technology conferences to have talks by sociologists, by psychologists, by current and former admirals and so forth. And I feel like DevOps just by definition is multidisciplinary. It has at least the disciplines of development and infrastructure, but really the DevOps Enterprise Summit blew my mind in terms of the multidisciplinary approach that they took, the vast breadth of different areas of expertise that provide incredible input and inform the world of technology and business. So really, that's probably the best, most enriching thing about coming to a conference like this is the intellectual breadth, which really helps all of us to understand how we can borrow some of these essential distilled conclusions that are really like Ron Westrom's life work, in a sense, was helping to understand organizational culture. And the value of a talk like that can't be overestimated. Like the value of just getting 30 minutes of time from some of these brilliant thinkers can't be overestimated. All right. Well, that ought to keep you busy.
I think, yeah, the last thing to note here is that this video is really us committing to not only showing up to these talks and actually paying attention and making sure that we attend, but collecting some thoughts and then reporting back. So stay tuned for part 2, where we report back on what we saw, what we heard in conversation around these talks, and how the whole event went in part 2.